So this is the basic presentation topic that I have. And I don't want to waste too much of time on Clover. This is the company that Krishna spoke about. Founded it in 2008. We have grown and, across different verticals like organic farming and aquaculture we are doing in down south and Andhra and a couple of other states. We are doing solid waste management and we are doing wastewater treatment. Pertinent to mention here that in terms of wastewater, we don't just manage the effluent or the sewage for companies in an innovative manner, but we also clean up large water bodies like lakes and drains and things like that. So, I believe in just not talking, but actually, trying to walk the talk. So we are doing that also in many geographies. This is our factory here in Dehradun where we produce certain organic inputs, not only for agriculture, but also for aquaculture, like I said, waste management and a couple of other segments. This is our dynamic team of people, all professionals in their own right. And I'm just talking about head office here. We have a separate team for Mizoram, separate for Manipur, separate for Andhra and a couple of other states. Okay, so this is just about Clover. What I want to now just launch myself into what today's topic is. So one thing to understand is that the world as we know, in the beginning, it was all organic. Nobody knew chemical farming because, that time chemicals not even invented. And around the world was, just before the World War, I would say, the chemicals came into the picture. And the two world wars that we unfortunately fought, they actually acted like catalyst for conventional farming to take roots in a big way. Just sharing with you how. I mean, I thought it's a pretty interesting way to start. So the factories which were actually making armaments or bombs, etc., for the World War I, suddenly found out of business because the war finished and there was not so much of demand. So they switched to making fertilizers. Because as you might know, the chemicals used for making fertilizer and explosives is the same, ammonium nitrate. So this happened in the US, in UK, and many other countries. I'm just showing you some pictures of the US. Then World War II took place. And this further pushed chemical farming. Posters like these started appearing all over. You got to feed the soldiers. They need they need large quantities of food in a quick time. And only way to do that in many respects was, by using chemicals. Sustainability was not really the need of the hour at that point of time. It was that every soldier should be fed, should not go hungry. So you can see these stockpiles of explosives that were left over after the World War II. And they gave the Allies didn't know what to do with so many explosives out there. Okay, what to do? I mean, ammonium nitrate was taken out and it was sold off, as fertilizer and used as fertilizers by the farmers. Now, along with that, Hitler, as you know, gas chambers and all that, I'm sure you know the history. So this guy, Dr. Haber, he invented something called the sarin gas, which I'm sure some of you may be aware of. So the liquid part of that was actually used to kill the Jews. And later on, it was, used to actually, used as an insecticide. So you can understand, how the World War I, World War II, I'm not saying that only the world wars were responsible for chemical farming to take root, but certainly they acted like a huge catalyst for, the non-organic farming, as it were, to take roots. So this is about how it happened. And then came the genetically modified crops from the US. And Europe suddenly found it surrounded and they could not really come up with a countermeasure because, as you might know, the US and Europe and trade wars continuously. So what to do? How do you fight the GM of the US? So Europe invented at that point of time organic as a non-tariff barrier. So this went on for, it's been since whatever time frame it started till now. This is going on, and EU is the main propagator of organic. Though now you have standards in the US, Japan, and all the other countries as well. So this is how chemical farming took place. Before that, we were all organic. So how does it really impact today's scenario, or how do we draw some inferences from it? So for that, you got to see the definition of organic by a body called IFOAM. I don't know how many of you know IFOAM. So you can go through the definition. It's there on the internet. Not a big deal. International Federation of Organic Agriculture Movement has got its roots in Germany, Stuttgart. And it talks about organic farming. It propagates organic farming on a global basis. What is pertinent to note here is that according to them, according to their own definition, we should be adapted to local conditions. Now, again, what happened at that point of time when India was getting into the Organic Act, as and trying to get organic farming into the country? So, firstly, because we didn't have any standards as such, so more or less the EU standards became our organic standards in the country. The body that did it was APIDA, which some of you might know. It's a government arm. And so we mimic the West because we always feel that, the West is the best. And that's how it basically all started. If you look at the way organic farming is done in especially the mountain states, you will find that they grow organic food because hardly any chemicals are being used in the mountain states like, Uttarakhand or let's say Himachal or northeastern states. But the problem is that they grow organic, but they eat chemicals. Because we copied the Western ideals and things, organic food is positioned as an elite and not for really the masses. You might have seen so many of these so-called organic shops across different parts of the country, and it is growing phenomenally. So you'll see more of them being mushrooming. Fab India has taken the lead there. So 250, 300 rupees per kg for organic rice. Now the certification laws, they are also a little indifferent to our culture and biodiversity. To give you an example, we are organic by default in many states, as many state governments talk about this. But the certification norms, they are still the same. You got to wait 3 years. Why? We don't need to do that. It's only now that we are finding meaning in different types of certification, PGS and so many others, that hopefully this trend is going to change. There are many other, how should I say, like you can, I think, well imagine that what is good for Europe is not really good for this country. We got to have separate standards for India. Another, how should I say, problem you can call it, that occurred because of this, that, organic must be sold at very, very high margin. So organic must demand a premium. So many people, farmers were communicated by the bureaucrats, by so many others, extension services, etc., that if you do organic, you'll be a rich farmer because you can get double, triple, whatever, the rates as compared to the others. Not realizing that, I'm sure some of you are commerce students, that premium is basically a function of demand and supply. If you look at the Maruti 800 that came up, or Bajaj scooter before that, it was sold in black at a big premium. Why? Because the demand was less, much less as compared to the supply. So same thing holds ground in organic. I'll give an example here. So tea, Indian tea is very well known in Europe and many other countries. It demanded at that time when it started out organic tea, 400% premium. So what is sold in the Indian market for 100 rupees, for example, was being exported at 400 rupees organically. And after some time, Kenya, Vietnam, Sri Lanka, they joined into the fray. So the production actually increased manifold. No doubt that the consumption patterns also increased, but the premium from 400% today is barely at 20 to 30%. And that too, if you're lucky. So please don't get into organic just because of premium. That is not something that will really fetch you how should I say, a good return on this business. Because of all these problems, less than 1% people, though you know that 60% of the population approximately is involved directly, indirectly in agriculture. Organic, unfortunately, has not really taken off to the extent it should. The people involved in the value chain, just less than 1% are involved in this in terms of production, certification, transportation, value addition, etc., etc. Though it can be much more broad-based if it is, done a little differently. Organic is supposed to be chemical-free. That's why people buy it. However, it has been noticed that there has been, instances where chemicals have been found in organic. So that's a little corruption in the system. Again, we are trying to find ways and means of doing it. Ministry is working very hard on it, and they've come out with stricter laws so that this doesn't happen. But this is the reality which is there, which I want to present to you all. The constraints which are there in marketing as far as organic goes. So, some instances I've covered, and I want to just give an example of the production side also. What are the constraints that we face? So one is that compost cannot supply all the nutrients. That is what is said by many people. And why do they say that? Because they look at organic through a conventional lens. So let us say a C4 category crop, like let's say wheat or corn or something like that. They will say, a typical, somebody would say at that point of time, now of course things have changed a bit, that some 200, 300 tons of compost is required per hectare to give the required amount of nitrogen to the crop. So what you got to understand really is that compost is never, ever for the crop. In fact, it's not even a fertilizer. It's not really a fertilizer. It is basically food for the, the soil-borne microbes, which in turn produce all the nutrients that a crop typically needs. So this distinction that, you got to look at the soil and not the crop is something that was missing, but slowly I'm happy to note that it is coming in. Then another problem that if you grow conventional, if you switch to organic from chemical farming, your yields are going to drop. And what we found was that if you do organic in a phased manner, every cropping cycle, 20%, 25%, you go on reducing your chemicals, then your yield never drops. Many people say, including some people in the scientific community, that there's no real cure for pests and diseases in organic. There are hundreds of cures, mechanical cures and botanical cures and microbial cures. There are ITKs out there, indigenous technical knowledge that one can utilize to actually cure pests and diseases. So, like I said, that the focus needs to be on the crop. The focus needs to be on the soil, which is currently on the crop. That needs to be corrected. This is the market trend that's happening in terms of, because of the pandemic also, that turmeric has suddenly become the superfood. And there is a rising awareness of organic, 30% growth. And then some of my good friends in organic who are there, they recorded almost a 60% growth during the lockdown in organic, a big spike. And affordability has definitely increased according to many people because, people are not traveling, they are not going on holidays. So there are a lot of savings that's happening. So a lot of people are now switching to organic as a result of that. Now, if you look at the different constraints, what you need to look at as far as the business model goes in organic is to convert these constraints into opportunities. I'm just giving you some examples of that. I'm not saying it is the just a illustrative kind of thing. So look at, for example, there are a lot of precision agriculture now happening, which is a buzzword. Some of you might have heard about it: drones and sensors, and they're getting IT into it. ERP, farm ERPs are coming in. Inputs, like I mentioned earlier, you talk biologicals. There are a lot of exciting products now coming into the market, which can actually help the farmers. Training programs, you can become a training center for sustainable agriculture, and there are many takers for that. Be it schools, colleges, or even the farmers, etc. There's so many people who would want to get trained. Post-harvest management, again, this is like, the one vital link which is missing, when we talk about agriculture. We talk about production, we talk about marketing. The vital link of post-harvest, that how to, convert that produce into marketable or quality produce that a consumer might want, is missing in many cases. So this is another big thing that one can get into. This would mean getting into cold chains, cooling chambers, packaging, many, many opportunities out there as well. Processing, let's say I'm giving you a simple thing like turmeric. So you got just drying the turmeric. There are many buyers today. I mean, there so much of demand is there for, organic dried turmeric and dried ginger. Similarly, there's a big demand for, powdered, or let's say the powdered turmeric. Then there is demand for oils. So, primary, secondary, tertiary, there are all kinds of processing one can do. You can sell the processed stuff. There's a lot of opportunities in, putting up these processing plants in many places, small, big, large. So all those things are there. Then you can get into marketing, which is again a very exciting field, where you talk about, the local markets which are there. When I say local, it is like farmers offer certain geographies, selling their produce in that same geography. You could be an aggregator for many companies. You could be an exporter. You could get into small retail, or maybe even, how should I say, large amount of packaging. You could get into branding. There are specific outfits now only coming for branding in organics. So these are some of the things that Clover is doing, that, trying to walk the talk. So like, we are working in the Northeast. Some of you might know about it. So we introduced terrace farming, for example, for the first time in many states. You come up with package of practices in local languages that now the farmers are using to understand how to grow a certain crop. We are continuously doing training programs, practical, theoretical, on composting, energy pillars, and so many other things. We are trying to use innovative use of radio, SMS, TV channels, etc., to reach out to the farmers, to buy and to, give them support. We are trying to do payments to the same farmers through DBT, direct beneficiary transfer, so that the farmers are able to get the money and there is no middleman involved. We teach farmers how to become self-dependent. We have a composting agent, which is used to make very high quality compost in quick time. The same product is also used to give organic nutrients to trees in less than 10 minutes, which we've given numerous training programs with excellent results, fantastic results. These are some of the products that we make in that factory that I showed you. We are trying to I mean, Clover was never really into marketing to start with, but we realized that unless we, complete the loop, we are not going to really make that kind of impact that we all want. So we are getting into marketing in a big way. We already done about maybe 2 to 3 crores last season. This time we hope to do 10 times that. So we bring buyers to the farmer co-ops, or we buy from the farmers and we sell. So these are some of the pictures of large scale B2B marketing being done. We opened these retail stores, farmer driven shops, so that the farmers get a space and they are able to earn the retail rates for their efforts. So we have tried 2 of these shops right now in Mizoram as we speak, and we are trying to bring them to an economically stable situation in the next few months. And then we plan to explore literally, maybe put 50, 100 of these shops across different geographies. Also to note here is that we're using banana leaves, because that's something like, it grows like weed in Mizoram. So it makes natural sense to use eco-friendly packaging. We are assisting FPOs and all to make value-added products, face pack and capsules and things like that. So just a simple glance of all this, and the very exciting, very interesting opportunity that wait for you for anyone, which is there in organic. So I've just touched the tip of the iceberg, because I wanted to make it as practical as possible. So I just want to stop my presentation here and then